And I think at the end of the day, we realize that you have to have many diverse points of view and people at the table so that we are creating the future that we can imagine as far as we can see it for our society. But we don't yet have the right governance structure or institutions to really make sure that we use the most of that technology.
And when I look at the Agenda 2030, our objective to leave no one behind, to have a fair globalization, there is only one way to do it, which is to use as much as we can the digital technologies to a quantum leap in relation to global development and to a fair development. But for that, there is a major threat that we need to overcome. Half of the world population is still offline. So the first priority is to make sure that everybody is online, that everybody has the capacity to benefit from the digital era in which we are entering. And this requires a huge commitment of governments, a huge commitment of the business community, of societies, but it is an absolute must. We need to have a globalization for all. We need to be able not to leave people behind, because if not, the conflicts will inevitably grow, the mistrust will inevitably grow. And the digital platforms enable us to reach everybody. So let's invest to make sure it happens.
And one of the reasons I'm so glad that the SG had this panel come together is we need to look at it as a world and say we need to be investing in human capital and infrastructure. But infrastructure today is not just roads and water and electricity. Those things are absolutely important. We still need to push those. But it also means access to information.
One of the fantastic things about this panel is that not only they have shown how we can maximize the use of this huge potential, but also they have addressed the problems of the threats and the risks that exist. I mean, I came from Christchurch, and we know the internet can be used on a terrible way. But the point is that we need to approach it in a way that is also cooperative. We cannot do it as in the past, in which an international convention was established after a discussion that would take years. Finally, all countries would come together, and then they would take 2 or 3 years to ratify, to regulate the internet. This would be a disaster. We need forms of cooperation. We need forms of governance based on cooperation. We need limited and smart regulation, and this can only be done bringing together all stakeholders, governments, businesses, the academia, the civil society, which means that the multilateralism of the future will be different. We need multilateral approaches to the challenges we have today, be it climate change, be it technology, but that multilateralism needs to be inclusive. Needs to be governments, academia, civil society, businesses, because only cooperating together we will be able to limit the threats that exist and the risks that exist, and to maximize the potential, the positive potential, to make the digital era a era of progress and justice for the whole world.
I think tech should be good, because this technology is going to be so powerful that if you think don't be evil. Don't be evil is just the bottom line, should not be the goal. Every technology company should do good things. And if you only think about do good things, you will have more creative people joining you, and your company will be more profitable. And I think it's the create jobs, security, privacy things. These are not the problems the government should worry. These are the things the private sector should worry about too. Because
so
if
the government shouldn't worry about?
No, not only government worry about. Should also be worried by business like us, private sectors. Because only you think about the jobs, only you think about inclusive, only you think about the secure and privacy, your company will be sustainable, will be welcome in this century. Otherwise, you'll be out.
I think of this a bit like transportation. At one point in our history, human beings walked across the plains and on the planet. Then we rode horses and other means of transportation. Then we built rail systems, we built shipping systems, we built cars. Now we fly across the world. You can go essentially from Nairobi through Southeast Asia to the United States to London. And at a 99% rate, human beings can do that travel in a safe way. Now your luggage might arrive at a 97% rate, and you might not quite like your meal on every flight that you get. But we have regulated in such a way that the private sector is very robust, and yet there's certain regulations for safety of airspace and safety of passengers. And there is some hassle for passengers. I do have to stand in line and have my luggage checked, but I'm willing to do that at the airport because I can arrive safely. that is how I think we need to think about technology in the future, the digital age. How do we come together, civil society, private sector, government, to say, what are the needed guardrails on this technology, but that let the industry also flourish?
But we think at the smart time, we need smart policies. Government and private sector, academics should working together, make smart, because nobody is expert of future. We have to learn from mistakes. We move forward, and then we make policies which, because as I said, 25 years ago, we discussed a lot of the risk and worries. But all these things, nothing happened. But all these things we never worry about, it happens. So this is the human being is smart enough. We have to learn. We have to trust our own people.